As parts of Africa become more affluent, there's an increasing need for more insurance, from personal and property to driving a car. And a growing number of companies are not only providing their customers with the assurance of insurance, but are becoming profitable areas of investment in their own right. Earlier, I spoke to one man who's looking to open up these markets further, Jonathan Kruger from Africa Merchant Capital.
It's an interesting sector to look at the moment, and we believe it's going through a transformational phase where a lot of corporates from South Africa are looking very closely at the markets. There's a lot of acquisitions going on, and that's bringing a lot of institutional frameworks to the market and increasing corporate governance. And I think that's lifting the whole sector from Kenya to Nigeria.
It presumably says something about an economy like the whole of the sub-Saharan one, when it is getting more interested in insurance, because it's a developing part, isn't it, of the nations themselves?
Yes. I think Africa, there's a lot being said about the consumer market, the growing middle class, and insurance is one of those sectors that also captures the growth in that sector. As people buy cars in Nigeria, you know, they also need to insure those cars. There's also life insurance that is becoming compulsory for corporates. So there's a lot of catalysts in the sector that are driving the markets.
What are the challenges, though? Because presumably there are regulatory differences, aren't there, amongst the regions and so on? Maybe some are developed, some aren't.
Yes, that's right. Also looking at Nigeria, previously the insurance companies were on Nigerian reporting standards, and in 2012 they switched over to international reporting standards. So from an investor's point of view, that's great, because you can compare like for like the way things are recorded on the income statements, the balance sheets. But then if you look at, say, less sophisticated countries, maybe you're looking at Tanzania, Malawi, they haven't quite got to that level yet, and that takes a unique insight into the market to draw out the value.
If you wanted to invest in these, would you go local, or would you sort of approach it from an international point of view?
Michael, that's an interesting one, and many investors look at South Africa as a gateway into Africa to access these markets, and looking at companies like Sanlam, Old Mutual, which are making acquisitions. However, those income streams coming from, say, the frontier African markets are actually small in terms of those companies' revenue, asset base. So we believe that you need to go directly to the local exchanges in these markets, buy companies directly, and make a good selection there, investigate the corporate governance, and preferably invest in a professional investment manager that knows how to navigate this landscape.
Can you give us some ideas?
Some companies,
names.
Some names.
Yeah.
Well, one of the names we're looking very closely at is Custodian and Allied Insurance, and they recently made an acquisition of Crusader in Nigeria. And that was the life side of the business. They are traditionally a non-life, and we've seen a transformation in the business as they improve the net underwriting margins, and also generating returns off their investment portfolios. And we believe that's a turnaround story. There's also other companies such as Kenya Re, Mansard, that are also interesting plays.
Now, you're obviously from South Africa. Let me ask you just briefly about the South African economy. The mining strikes that are still going on at the moment, I mean, do you find that's dispiriting in terms of people's idea about the South African economy and what's going on in South Africa?
I think definitely, and speaking from an investment perspective, I think it is fairly devastating, because when you look at performance of companies, it is essentially coming down to their bottom line, and the production numbers are not being hit. We've seen companies such as Lonmin losing a third of production, and I think that is discouraging foreign investors into South Africa, and they start looking at places like Zambia. There's even Nigeria. There's been new listings in the oil sector with a company such as Seplat, and I think as long as this continues, it's going to drive perception that South Africa has actually got some structural problems. It's slowing down on the back of that, and investors are looking elsewhere in the continent where the environment is more conducive to business.